bid you welcome to HFK Presents 5 Minutes of History. I'm your host, Terry Lynch, bringing you on the road with HFK Presents to the Senior Center at Park Ridge, where we'll hear some haunted history stories from old Hank.
While I wait, I'll tell you a little bit about my train. You don't mind, do you, dear? Oh, good. See, I have an unusual train. My train has been traveling Illinois for centuries. And the only way you get on my train is to tell me how you died. Yeah, so I'll tell you about a few of the passengers while I wait for those new passengers to come along. I'll start with one of my oldest passengers of all. It's this fellow up here in the corner. Yes, the Indian there. You know, Illinois was surrounded by wild Indians for centuries. Some of the oldest tribes lived in this area long before the settlers. The Cahokia mound builders were just those fellas. Yes, this fellow was a Cahokia Indian, and he lived in the area when settlers came through. French fur trappers started settling in the southern end of what would become Illinois. And, well, they all based themselves around this town called Kaskaskia. And you know why they went to Kaskaskia, dear? Oh, it's because it was right on the Mississippi. That was the highway of the day. We didn't have 294 at the time. So they all settled on the Mississippi so they could travel up and down. And Kaskaskia was a beautiful location. Yeah, right there on the Mississippi. Nice, wonderful place. The French fur trappers would build their houses out of logs. And so this one fellow, by the name of Claude, he was the biggest businessman in all of Kaskaskia, and he wanted a big house that would justify his place in society. So he wanted a big place made out of stones and mortar, and he hired on a bunch of these Indian fellas to build it, clear off the area, make a nice foundation with boulders and rocks and whatnot. Well, I forgot to tell you, Claude had a daughter looked an awful lot like you. Yes. Well, this Indian, he falls in love with Claude's daughter, and he says, I want to marry you. Claude says, absolutely not. I won't have you marrying a savage beast who runs around half naked in the woods. No, out of the question. Don't embarrass me with that. As a matter of fact, he fires the Indian. He tells him, get out of town. If you go to work for anyone else in Kaskaskia, I won't do business with them. Well, you know what this means. That poor fellow can't get a job because everyone wants to do business with Claude because he's got all the money, see? So the Indian leaves town, goes off into the wilderness for the rest of the summer. And his poor beloved, she's heartbroken, isn't she? Yes. Oh, yes. It's terrible. Well, a winter passes by, and the next spring, more Indians come in to help in Kaskaskia. This fella comes in disguise. No one recognizes him except for Claude's daughter. Yeah, she says, finally, you come back for me. And he says, yes, tonight, when the moon is full and the stars sprinkle the sky, I'm coming back, and we're going to run away and be married. She can't wait, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, sir. Nighttime comes. Claude's daughter waits. The Indian fella comes along, and it was a full moon, not a cloud in the sky. Stars as far as the eye could see. It was almost though it was daylight. They run off, and Claude hears a noise. And he looks out and he sees a couple running away from the house. He calls up some of his friends and he alerts them, and they chase after this couple. They find them about 15 miles up the road, right there near the Mississippi River. You know what they do? They don't shoot them. No, that would be cruel and unusual punishment. No, they've got a better plan. See, they find a tree that fell down during a storm, and they tie that poor fella up to the tree so he can't move his arms or his legs, and they pick him up and they throw him into the Mississippi River. And he starts bobbing up and down, gasping for breath, and before he goes down for the very last time, he puts a curse on the folks of Kaskaskia. He says, Claude, you will meet me in the great beyond within the year. Your daughter even sooner. And as for the rest of you in Kaskaskia, your town will cease to exist, but not before it's swallowed up and the dead raised from the ground one last time. With that, he's pulled down into the Mississippi and never seen again. His poor beloved, she's heartbroken. She saw her true love die before her eyes, and she couldn't help one bit. Isn't that right, dear? That's right. Yes. She refuses to eat. Within 3 months, she's dead of starvation. Part one of the curse came true. Now, business turns bad for Claude, and he's not getting the deals he used to. So he starts cooking the books, so to say. And he gets caught cheating some of his business partners. And one of them challenges him to a duel. And guess what? Claude loses. Bang is right. Part two of the curse came true. Well, you can imagine at this time people at Kaskaskia are looking right over their shoulder, waiting for their dead relatives to tap them on the shoulder. But nothing happens. Oh, my goodness sakes alive. It's an Indian curse. It's a savage beast. Yes. Now, folks, it becomes the first state capital of Illinois. They all forget about the curse of Kaskaskia. It becomes a really nice place. A little church in the center of town and houses surrounding it all the way out. And on the east end of the town is a small little creek where people go for lunches and whatnot. Oh, they forget all about Kaskaskia's curse. But of course, it's not the state capital now, is it? No. That's because it was too small a town, see? So they moved the state capital a couple of times to Vandalia and eventually up to Springfield. There's your history lesson for the day. Yes. And Kaskaskia goes on being a wonderful town on the riverfront until about the 1870s, when something starts to happen. You see that little river on the east side of town starts to get bigger and bigger and wilder and wilder. And it starts getting larger and swallowing up house after house, block after block. It makes its way to the center of the town where that church is, and in the back of that church is a graveyard. And that graveyard is saturated with water. And each and every one of those coffins bubbles up out of the ground. And it's swept away into the Mississippi. And the town of Kaskaskia, it ceases to exist. On this side of the Mississippi. It's cut off from the rest of Illinois. If you doubt me, you go to yourself to a map and you look. Kaskaskia is the only part of Illinois west of the Mississippi. It was cut off. Now, some say it was the currents from the dams and the locks they put up, but we know better, don't we? It's the curse of Kaskaskia come back to haunt us. Yes.
Oh, I hope you'll be able to sleep tonight. Those stories were too scary. Where are they? Well, that's about all the time we have today. I'm your host, Terry Lynch, with HFK Presents 5 Minutes of History. Remember, you're still able to get our book, Mistakes Happen, a historical guide to overcoming adversity, on our website or Amazon.com. Until next time, remember, history happens when you least expect it.